The NFL Combine is this weekend, but before all the players that we care about do their testing, I wanted to highlight 5 underrated rookies to watch during and after the NFL Combine. Starting first with Kansas running back Devin Neal. Now, Neal was actually eligible to declare last year, and I actually had him as my pre-Combine RB3 in last year's class before he then decided to stay for his 4th year. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything when this year's class is considerably better than last year, so the RB3 in 2024 does not equate to the RB3 in 2025, but that might actually work to our advantage as Neal's prospect profile didn't change at all, but we're going to be able to get him cheaper this year compared to last year. Through 4 seasons at Kansas, Neal was extremely productive basically every single year. As a freshman, he immediately became the Jayhawks RB1, though he did split carries more just because he was still a freshman. It was really until his sophomore season where he saw his first big breakout year, rushing for over 1,000 yards, 9 rushing touchdowns on only 180 carries, plus adding another 21 receptions for almost 200 yards and another score through the air. 2023 was an even better year with almost 1,300 yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, and then 2024 just more of the same, over 1,200 rushing yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, while also still being a solid contributor through the air in both seasons. He is a very good sized back at 5'11", 215 pounds. We'll see if he actually is that big at the NFL Combine, but even if he's 5'10", closer to like 200, that is still a very solid size for an NFL back in the range of Javonte Williams or Chase Brown, J.K. Dobbins, or Aaron Jones. And that's really the perfect word to describe Devin Neal. Solid. He is not elite at any one thing, but he's also not bad at anything either. He's a very capable volume back with absolutely zero injury history. He's a good receiver out of the backfield, but he's not really a pass-catching threat. He's a good tackle breaker, not really great. He's okay with contact, but he's not a power runner. He has solid long speed, but he's not elite there either. He's probably going to be a low 4.5s, maybe even high 4.4s at best. And that also contributes to just a lack of breakaway runs in college. He's going to churn yardage for you, but he's not someone that's a home run threat on any given play. Again, he's just solid overall. And that might turn people off. He is just kind of a boring prospect, but he gets the job done when he has the ball in his hands, and it might not be flashy or sexy or all that exciting, but NFL teams might gravitate to a dude who just does what he's told to do. If he can land somewhere on day 3 where he has a path to a starting job, or even is just a good handcuff running back, I will be looking at Devin Neal at the end of the 2nd round or even the early 3rd in my rookie drafts. Very similar to how I was with Ray Davis last year, Chase Brown the year before, Jerome Ford, Tyler Algier, Elijah Mitchell, guys like that in my rookie drafts. That's how I view Devin Neal right now, as an upside late round pick. Staying at the running back position, we have an even deeper name down the rankings list, but I've already started seeing his name pop up on Twitter as a sleeper, and that's LeQuint Allen out of Syracuse. And listen, I've swung and missed hard on the last Syracuse running back that came through the draft with Sean Tucker, but I'm just going right back to the well here because these guys just produce, man. In 3 seasons with the Syracuse Orange, Allen has 2 1,000-yard seasons in 2023 and 2024 after taking over the starting job after Sean Tucker left, including 16 rushing touchdowns this past year in 2024. But that's not even the main highlight. Allen posted 38 receptions in 2023 and then 64 receptions for 521 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2024. He is a legitimate receiving game weapon. He's actually one of only 2 running backs in 2024 that rushed for over 1,000 yards and caught over 500 yards. It's just him and Cam Skadaboo in 2024. And he's one of 9 running backs since 2015 to eclipse that 1,000-yard mark and 500 receiving yard mark in the same season. A list that includes Ashton Jeanty in 2023, Saquon Barkley in 2017, Joe Mixon in 2016, and Christian McCaffrey in 2015. Now, I don't want to compare LeQuint Allen to all of those fantastic NFL running backs, and I honestly don't even think that he really has the upside to be an RB1 starter in the NFL. I think he profiles much more as that pass-catching RB2 who can take over as the RB1 if the starter were to get hurt. And those are some of my favorite handcuff running backs to have in Dynasty, because if Allen has a large enough role as a receiver on, say, 40% of snaps or something like that, he can be a flex option for you in a pinch when everybody's healthy. But if the starter does go down, Allen has that profile to be a 3-down guy and have fantasy RB1 weeks just from that. It's the same kind of upside that Rachaad White has now if Bucky Irving were to get hurt, or Tyjae Spears if Tony Pollard were to get hurt, which we did see a couple of times to end the year last year. Austin Eckler on the Washington Commanders being very startable with Brian Robinson, but can also handle a larger workload when needed. Jaylen Warren, Jerome Ford, even Dare Ogunbowale had a couple RB2 weeks when Joe Mixon was hurt last year. I think LeQuint Allen is a name that is very easily going to get lost in the sauce on day 3 and in your rookie drafts, that he's probably going to be a 4th round rookie pick, and he'll be my auto 4th round rookie pick every single time. Before we get to wide receivers, I do want to mention one tight end that I knew who he was during the season, but then the Senior Bowl really put him on the map for me, and that is Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. Now, this tight end class is absolutely insane. I mean, the fact that we have potentially 3 top 50 overall picks, maybe even 3 first-round picks, if teams really jump on the tight ends this year, kind of like we saw in 2017 with O.J. Howard, Evan Ingram, and David Njoku, but like 2017, there were a couple of hits at the position later in the draft. Most notably, of course, George Kittle in the 5th round, but also we got Jonnu Smith and even kind of to a degree, Gerald Everett, both guys on day 2. And I think Arroyo could find himself as that super interesting later round option with a ton of upside, like Jonnu Smith more specifically. You see, Arroyo's main issue from his college career is really centered around a torn ACL in 2022 that also pretty much killed his 2023 season. And then watching some of his 2024 tape, I also think that he struggled early on playing on that knee because it really took him some time to get back into what I thought looked like full confidence and health for him during those games. He did have a couple good games early on in 2024, but it was really the final 4 games that he looked the strongest, hauling in 18 passes, 269 yards, and 3 touchdowns over that stretch to end the year. I think his biggest negative, specifically as a tight end, is that he is a very raw blocker. I mean, I can tell that he's willing to block, and I do think that he improved over the course of the 2024 season, just like everything else in his game, but he's not really great at it. He definitely will need work there if he's expected to be an every down tight end or be that extra lineman in very certain offenses, especially those run-first offenses. He's much more of an athletic tight end who lines up in the slot, runs routes on linebackers or smaller DBs for mismatches, than really just a true blocker. That is why he is more Jonnu Smith to me and not George Kittle. But of course, if you've been keeping up with the Combine news already, you probably saw that Elijah Arroyo is skipping the NFL Combine because of a knee injury from the Senior Bowl. So you won't be able to see how he looks athletically compared to the rest of the class, and this is probably more of a red flag that his medical history might get in the way throughout his NFL career. But I still think that if Elijah Arroyo can stay healthy, find the right offense, even on day 3, that he can be a very good fantasy tight end that you find late in your rookie drafts. All right, on to the wide receivers now. The first one is one of my very early favorites so far out of Iowa State, Jayden Higgins. Now, Higgins is a 4-year guy out of Iowa State, but he did start his career at Eastern Kentucky for 2 years, doing well there as a sophomore before transferring to ISU and just immediately dominating the team's receiving room as a junior, then building on that even more as a senior in 2024 with almost 1,200 receiving yards and 9 receiving touchdowns. And then you turn on the tape and he is a lot of fun to watch. He is that huge wide receiver that moves and runs routes just so fluidly, but he also has that massive high point advantage that any quarterback is just going to love throwing it up to him and letting him go and make a play. He lines up all over the field, outside, in the slot, gets motioned around so that he can find that mismatch, and then he just wins. His route running is so smooth, his hands are natural, they're very soft, and he tracks the ball extremely well down the sidelines and in the end zone. Honestly, when I watch him, I see Michael Thomas from his days at Ohio State. I see that big-bodied receiver that Michael Thomas was with all of that route running fluidity, even if he doesn't excel over an entire route tree. There is also somewhat of a weakness when it comes to yards after the catch that I saw Michael Thomas that I also see with Jayden Higgins. I mean, don't get me wrong, Higgins can move after the catch because he's just so tall. He can pick up strides and yards very, very quickly, and he can break a tackler or two, but it really isn't his strength, and I don't think it was Michael Thomas's strength either. It's just way easier for them to come down with the ball, and then that's just kind of that, unless they're already on the move in space. I really don't see all that much of a difference between Tet McMillan and Jayden Higgins. I mean, Tet has Higgins beat on all of the age-adjusted production that we care about and is way better after the catch as well too, but Higgins has a better career yards per route run, better targets per route run, better first downs per route run. Even their career contested catch numbers are pretty close, with Higgins actually being a bit better coming down with the ball too. Like if you miss on Tet McMillan in the early first or decide to trade back into the mid first, take one of those running backs, you could snag Higgins in the early third round according to our Superflex rookie ADP and have a very similar player. And the last sleeper rookie wide receiver to watch right now is Colorado State wide receiver Tory Horton. Now, unfortunately, I don't think that Horton is going to be participating in any drills at the NFL Combine this weekend due to a season-ending knee injury that he had surgery on back in October. But that actually might be beneficial for us once again, for those of us who are in on Horton as a late round rookie pick, because he probably won't get the attention that he deserves and he's just going to continue flying under the radar through draft season. Horton is a 5-year player who originally began his career at Nevada before transferring to Colorado State as a junior. He was decent at Nevada, but that move to Colorado State really changed things because Horton immediately put up 2 back-to-back seasons of 1,100 yards and 8 receiving touchdowns in 2022 and in 2023. Then, as I mentioned, a knee injury in early October ended his 2024 season early. But Horton is just a very exciting player to watch on film. He is completely different than Jayden Higgins in basically every single way possible. Horton is an absolute speedster who would have probably ran in the low 4.3s, maybe even the 4.2s at the NFL Combine if he was healthy. He is kind of smaller and a skinnier dude, being listed anywhere between 6'1 to 6'3 in height and around that 185-pound mark in weight. But that frame also then comes that 4.3 speed, that acceleration after the catch for some huge plays just by purely outrunning people. But even with that size, Horton can also play bigger than his body. He has immense body control and is a very good contested catch receiver too. As long as the ball is placed somewhere in his vicinity, Horton has a more than fair chance at coming down with it. He's still a limited route runner, but he's very good at the routes that he was asked to do. And of course, with his size, he can get bullied at the line of scrimmage in press coverage or just during the route by bigger DBs capable of keeping up with him. But if he does find that separation and then gets the ball in his hands, he's a home run threat anywhere on the field. But what interests me most about Tory Horton is that he actually hits on 13 of my 14 PFF markers that I debuted in a video just a couple weeks ago. These markers are baselines that previously successful NFL wide receivers had coming out of college, just on a per route or per reception basis from Pro Football Focus. Things like yards per route run, targets per route run, first downs per route run, missed tackles, contested catches, all that kind of stuff. Horton hits on 13 of the 14 markers that I look at, which is actually kind of insane. In fact, since 2019, there are only 8 other wide receivers drafted in the NFL draft who hit on 13 or 14 of these PFF markers. Malik Nabers, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Wan'Dale Robinson, CeeDee Lamb, Laviska Shenault, Hollywood Brown, Paris Campbell, and Deontay Johnson. I mean, that is a pretty good list to be on as a wide receiver prospect. Sure, there are misses like Viska and Paris Campbell, and Wan'Dale even has just kind of been okay, but really nothing amazing. But the other 5 guys have all either posted multiple top 24 seasons already, or we're projecting them to continue posting top 24 seasons, if not even top 12 seasons. And sure, Horton isn't going to be a first-round pick this year, probably isn't going to be a second-round pick either, so it's probably not fair to comp him to Malik Nabers and CeeDee Lamb, or maybe even Hollywood Brown. But I wouldn't be shocked if he found his way into that late 3rd round, and if he's this class's Deontay Johnson, that's pretty great too, especially at his current rookie ADP. I mean, he can easily be a team wide receiver too, kind of like Tank Dell or Josh Downs or Khalil Shakir, and be extremely productive in that role. My actual comparison for him is Will Fuller, which I know doesn't sound great given Fuller's career, but that's the type of player that Tory Horton is, and if you remove the day 1 draft capital expectations, that's really not a bad career to have either for Tory Horton as a late day 2 or even early day 3 pick. Like if he landed in Washington as that complimentary wide receiver 2 to Terry McLaurin and the vertical threat to Jaden Daniels, I mean, oh my goodness, does that sound amazing. Put him in Houston with CJ Stroud, Dallas with Dak Prescott, Jacksonville, Denver, New England, even Cleveland doesn't sound that bad if they actually get a competent quarterback in there. I think Tory Horton just offers a very special and unique skill set that most teams are going to want, but if he lands in the right spot, I think he could offer great upside for fantasy football. And especially since he won't really be a big combine name, if he ran in that low 4.3s or even those 4.2s, he's going to keep flying under the radar and be a late round rookie steal that I would draft every single time.